Welcome to part 3 of chapter 20. We're talking about air pollution, and we're looking at two mechanisms on this slide, the scrubber and electrostatic precipitator, required on all emissions so that anything using fossil fuels, it removes sulfur and particulate matter. And we've discussed these in chapter 11 when we were talking about coal mining and combustion of coal. So these are basic drawings of what a scrubber would look like. The emissions gas coming in at the bottom, and then the force of the emissions gas forces it up through layers of the water, and then the layer of water traps then the sulfur. Water is going to trap more than just sulfur. If it had particulate matter, obviously it would take that out as well. You don't want just a lot of particulate matter in your water. Your water gets dirty, and then you have to take care of your sludge more often. With electrostatic precipitators, they work off of static cling and grab very fine particulate matter, and then they'll fall into a collection basin. Now, this does make a solid waste issue with sludge and with the particulate matter, and it has to be treated as a hazardous waste. This is to ensure that when trucks are filling up the gas, underground gas tanks at gas stations, that they're not emitting vapor into the atmosphere. The vapor actually is emitted down into the tank. There has to be an air opening so that the tank will unload properly. The date of the Clean Air Act 1970 is the original date. I know when some of you were doing your projects, you came up with the earlier dates of the Clean Air Act, but it didn't really have any meat to it. It didn't really keep anyone from polluting the air until 1970. Then it was updated again in 77 and 90, increasing the ability of the law to decrease any kind of bad emissions, particularly getting rid of the SOx and NOx, because during that time from 70 to 90 we realized that we certainly had an issue with acid rain, and basically what they were trying to do is get rid of that. Lead was also part of that package. Since then, the last thing was 2013, and that was mercury. And so by, I believe, 2018, they have all power plants have to be mercury free in their emissions. These are just some different cities. We've already talked about LA being the worst air pollution issue, and talked about the geography a little bit. You can see back in the 1990s, Gary, Indiana, in Chicago, Illinois, that area that they're talking about here had lots of steel mills and very, very, very dirty emissions. So basically they're taking iron and heating it up to molten and making steel products out of it. And so there are lots of toxins put off as air pollution, and lots of dirty water as well. So an area that was severely saturated with air pollution. And now, 2009, we're seeing that it's gotten better. Reducing sulfur content in gas, California does this, and consequently their gas per gallon is much more expensive. it does make your catalytic converter last longer. And we talked about those in class, how they were filters on cars so that your emissions were clean, carbon monoxide. And requiring a federal emission standard that includes SUVs, trucks, and minivans. To my knowledge, minivans have been added. Trucks, I am not sure. But most minivans and SUVs have catalytic converters on them. Emissions testing, we used to do this in Florida. I can remember going and having emissions tests before I could get tags down here for my car. And they don't do it anymore. Number one, they didn't see that it was decreasing any air pollution. And air pollution, fortunately, here in South Florida is not at this point a major issue. Do we have some? Yes. Anytime you're burning gasoline and you've got cars on the road, you've got air pollution. But we don't have lots of manufacturing to include in that. Most of our electricity comes from natural gas, so we have very little, as well as having that ocean breeze, so it takes it right out of here. So they quit the emissions testing for Florida because they just didn't see that they were getting a big bang, so to speak, for their buck doing it. Just a little trivia. $170 million tons of air pollution per year. Gives you in pounds. Minivans, SUVs, and light pickups, twice the emissions of automobiles. And this slide's a little bit old. Again, catalytic converters are being used on, I know, minivans and SUVs. California does take the sulfur from gas, and this is the cost per gallon, 1 to 6 cents. Lawnmowers produce 10% of the hydrocarbons and NOx because they burn inefficiently. So any of these lawnmowers, and think about all the lawnmowers that are down here in South Florida, and we mow our yards year-round down here. So those kinds of things are not regulated for emissions and very inefficient. They really use a lot of gasoline for the little bit of work that they do, comparatively. And so that's where you get the increase, or such a large amount, 10%. I know that doesn't sound like a large amount, but if you think about it, just mowing your yard is 10% of the hydrocarbons that are in the air. That's a lot. And NOx as well, because remember that NOx comes from oil combustion. Okay, that is the end of part 3, and this will be part 4, which we do in class.